What's the worst meltdown you've seen from a rich kid when their privilege finally stopped working? Story 1. I worked IT at a mid-sized logistics company when the owner's son, let's call him Trevor, descended from whatever country club cloud he lived on and became our VP of strategy. Audit logs. The tool records not just who approves, but IP, device, even the typo pattern, ours flags repeated backspaces. Guess whose account pushed a 2.3 M renewal at 2:04 a.m.? The CFO brings the board chair in, Trevor's mother, pearls and glacier stare. She asks one question. Did you break controls? He blames me, the tool, the anti-growth culture. Then IT pushes the screen share. We watch his laptop cursor in audit replay. He actually opens Slack and types, "Lol, watch this," before flipping the toggle. There's a quiet I'll never forget. The silence when money stops pretending to be power. Trevor goes feral. "You can't fire me," he says, pointing at his mother. "You wouldn't have a company without Dad's name." She doesn't look at him. She looks at the janitor, who's mopping the hall because the meeting ran late, and asks, "Has this disrupted your work, Mr. Alvarez?" He nods. She apologizes to him first. Security walks Trevor out. As he passes my desk, he leans in, whisper growls, "This isn't over." 2 days later, an email went out. The vendor under review. Savings target achieved. Leadership changes effective immediately. The punch? The board chair stepped down a week later. Her resignation note named one reason. "I love my son, but I love 1,200 paychecks more." The janitor got a raise. Trevor's yacht buddy turned state witness in a procurement probe. Turns out the only preferred partner Trevor had was the backspace key that recorded him sinking himself. Story 2. I'm the new partner. Met Dan after his divorce from Marissa, whose family owns 3 car dealerships and thinks money is a parenting style. Custody was 50-50 on paper, but in practice, the kids lived out of duffel bags because Marissa loved last-minute surprise trips to Chicago that coincided with Dan's weekends. We kept receipts, texts, calendars. She kept posting boomerangs of champagne. Final hearing was in May. Courtroom, fluorescent lights, coffee breath, the works. Marissa arrived in white like an angelic PR stunt, followed by a lawyer who literally said brand damage out loud. When the judge asked about missed exchange times, Marissa smiled. "I'm an entrepreneur. Things change." Then she slid a folder across the table listing Dan's supposed instability, a mix of cropped screenshots and a doctored bank statement implying he'd bounced child support. He hadn't. I'd do the bills. Our lawyer didn't flinch. "Your Honor, we have something." She produced a cheap kid's smartwatch. Marissa had given it to their 9-year-old for safety. What she didn't realize was that the location history and audio snippets automatically upload when it connects to Wi-Fi. For months, the watch had recorded fights with nannies, canceled pickups, and one cruel line. "Tell your dad I'm doing you a favor, letting you live the exciting life." The judge asked to hear one clip. It's Marissa laughing with her sister. "If he wants them, he can pay full tuition. I'll drop them off after yoga, maybe." Then my stepdaughter, soft voice, says, "Please don't make me late again. I got in trouble." The judge didn't blink. "Miss Hastings, do you understand what best interest means?" Marissa cracked. "Do you know who my father is?" she snapped, voice slicing the room. "We sponsor this courthouse's gala." She stood up, chairs scraping, and launched into a TED Talk about philanthropy. The judge's gavel hit once. "Sit down." The clerk looked like she might dissolve. The order came quick. Custody shifted to Dan, with Marissa getting alternate weekends and a compliance plan. The courtroom emptied while Marissa stared like the world had betrayed her. She followed us into the hall, hissing, "I'll ruin you." My stepdaughter, trembling, stepped behind me, and then, this was the moment, walked around, stood in front of her mother, and whispered, "I just want to be on time." It wasn't a victory dance. It was a tired child choosing quiet over glitter. The twist? 2 weeks later, Marissa posted a black square about respecting the court. Comments were disabled, but the dealership's summer ad featured my stepdaughter's science fair ribbon because they'd always used family photos in marketing. We sent a cease and desist. For once, the brand didn't get to use the kid got to use her time.
Story 3. I was the college roommate who somehow became the backup bridesmaid. The bride, Lila, was the kind of rich who called her mother by her first name and assistant. Fiancé was a sweet software guy, not poor, just new money earnest, with a Midwestern mom who mailed cookies every month. Lila's family planned a cliffside wedding that looked like a drone commercial. String quartets, glass tent, swans if the tide cooperated. Vendors started calling me 3 days before. Florist, we haven't been paid. Photographer, contract says deposit is due. Lila had told each one she was doing them a favor by tagging them on Insta. The morning of, the venue manager corners her about the outstanding balance. Lila laughs, holds up her phone and says, I have 180K followers. Exposure is the currency. Manager doesn't laugh. Meltdown detonates at golden hour. Guests are seated, quartet halfway through Moon River, when the venue cuts the power like a guillotine. Lila storms to the office in a cloud of tulle, screaming that she will end careers. The manager calm smiles and produces printed emails in which Lila's assistant, also a cousin, promised wire transfers that never arrived. We'll restore power when payment clears. Lila pivots to camera mode. Everyone quick, she shrieks. Do a video asking, venue name, why they're ruining true love. Phone's wise, but then someone else speaks. The florist, pale and shaky, who'd been working since dawn. You broke my contract and told me my roses were aspirational. I'm a single mom. She sets her invoice down next to the cake. Silence. Then the fiancé's Midwestern mom steps forward and asks, how much is everything today? She takes out a checkbook like a superhero from 1995. The manager says no, too big, needs a wire. The fiancé pulls out his phone to call the bank. Here's the twist. While this plays out, a notification pops up on a groomsman's phone. It's a Reddit post from earlier that morning, anonymous but obvious, detailing a fake charity partnership Lila had claimed to justify vendor discounts. Screenshots show her assistant crafting impact statements that were never filed. The post is trending locally. Guests start reading. The fiancé reads. He pockets his phone and looks at Lila. Tell me this isn't you. She starts crying in a way that has no tears. This is a witch hunt. We're the victims. He nods slowly, then turns to the manager. Don't restore the power. He takes the mic that isn't on and says, loud enough to carry anyway, I'm sorry, everyone. There won't be a wedding today. Lila's howl echoes off the cliffs. She chases him to the parking lot, threatening to sue the internet. The quartets pack up in the dim. The florist hands the Midwestern mom a single white rose for the road and whispers, you raised a good one. Mom does what moms do. She hugs the vendor, writes down every business name, and starts making calls the next morning. Not for exposure, but for referrals. The post? The top comment was from Lila's cousin assistant. I quit.
Story 4. I live in a blandly nice subdivision where the HOA newsletter uses clip art. Then came Chase, a legacy rich kid whose father owns a chain of orthopedic clinics. He bought the corner house and immediately started building a 2-story car museum that blocks sightlines and sunlight. The HOA sent polite letters. He responded with cease and desist templates downloaded from Google and a threat to replace the board. The meeting was held in the clubhouse, folding chairs and lukewarm LaCroix. Chase arrived late in Gucci slides and a t-shirt that said, "Hustle." He stood, didn't sit, and gave a speech about property rights and "you're just jealous." Someone pointed out the bylaws about outbuildings. He called them cute. Someone else asked about permits. He said, "We'll fix it in post." Then the city inspector walked in. Not dramatic, she looked like someone's aunt who makes perfect lemon bars. She opened a folder and read out the violations in a tone that made you realize rules have always been about weathering people like him. No plumbing permit, no structural engineer sign-off, no setback compliance. Stop work order effective immediately, she said, placing an orange paper like a hex on the clubhouse table. Chase laughed. "Lady, I'll call my dad." The inspector tilted her head. "You should." She pulled another paper because as of 10 this morning, a lien was recorded on the property for unpaid fines. He kept smiling until she added, "Addressed to the previous owner." That's when the twist unspooled. Chase never recorded the deed transfer properly. His father's family LLC had purchased the house in a shell game that went sloppy, and the old owner who'd moved to Florida had defaulted on a small city fine months ago. That fine ballooned. The lien meant the city could halt everything, not just for violations, but because, technically, Chase wasn't the legal owner of record. The old owner had already been notified and, fed up with the escrow fiasco, had signed a quitclaim to not Chase, but to the bank. Security tape stops. Concrete dries, and for the first time, his voice cracks. He rants about suing the HOA, the city, the bank, the concept of gravity. Neighbors don't cheer. They sigh. The HOA president, a retired nurse who's seen end-of-life bravado, says gently, "You can still be our neighbor, but you have to be a neighbor." The epilogue came on trash day. A towing company hauled the half-finished steel frame off like a defeated transformer. Chase didn't wave. 2 months later, a "for sale" sign appeared with a modest markup. The buyer asked if the HOA allows tree houses. We said yes. We even helped them build one. Less museum, more lemonade stand. Chase? He moved to a place without an HOA and started a podcast about small minds.
Story 5. I was the overlooked kid. Dad made his money in construction and remarried a woman who called me kiddo like a placeholder. My brother, Max, got the Range Rover at 16. I got a lecture about grit. When Dad died, the funeral was a networking event in black. I stood by the ficus, counting men who hugged me and slipped business cards into my palm like condolences were a funnel. The will reading was 2 days later in a paneled room that smelled like old money and lemon oil. Stepmother arrived with her attorney, face composed in that way people practice in mirrors. She'd always said, "Your father wanted what's best for you," which meant ski trips for Max and experience for me. I braced for nothing and still hoped because children do. The lawyer cleared his throat and read the preamble. Then came the surprises. Dad had set aside funds for scholarships for kids of undocumented workers who'd built his empire. He named a foundation board, the foreman who'd been with him since the first slab, a librarian he'd dated before money, and me. Max shifted. Stepmother blinked like she'd been slapped by light. Bequests rolled out, tools, photos, a box of letters. Then, the property. The house? Not to stepmother, not to us. To be sold, proceeds split between the scholarship fund and the beneficiaries named in Addendum C. The lawyer clicked a folder opened, the door opened too, and in walked a woman with 2 teenagers who had my father's impossible eyebrows. The meltdown came fast. Stepmother stood, chair skittering. "Absolutely not," she said, like the law was a waiter who'd gotten the order wrong. "This is a scam. Harold would never." The lawyer lifted a melted wax envelope with Dad's heavy ring press, dated 11 months earlier, DNA tests, letters, apologies, plans.
He'd been paying for their rent quietly, scared of detonating the life he'd made noisy. Max said, "You cheated?" to a man who wasn't there. I said nothing, because grief is an ocean, and the second family's arrival was another wave. The teenagers looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Stepmother's voice went high. "I made this family. I put you through boarding school." The older teen flinched. The lawyer read the clause. In case of discomfort, the foundation would take the lead on selling the house. Stepmother could remain as a tenant for a year at market rent. Here's the twist. I expected rage to taste like victory. It didn't. It tasted like drywall dust and old baseball games. After the meeting in the parking lot, the woman, Marisol, approached me. She said, "He told me about you. He said you didn't ask for things, so he forgot you needed them." She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo of me at 8, holding a toolbox twice my size, my father squatting beside me, both of us laughing like time was cheap. I took the foundation seat. Max declined. Stepmother hired a PR firm to reframe the story as legacy stewardship, then sued and lost. The two teenagers came to the first scholarship ceremony and sat in the back. Afterward, the younger one asked if I could show them how to use a drill. I said yes, and in the echo of an empty gym, I realized privilege can't be inherited if you decide to share it. The meltdown had finally stopped working, and something quieter started.
Story 6. I was a grad TA for Intro Macro at a private university where the donor wall looks like a Fortune 500 org chart. Midterm 2 lit up Turnitin like a Christmas tree. One exam matched a paywalled tutoring site word for word, including a typo where elasticity became electricity. The name on the paper belonged to Parker, heir to a shipping empire and owner of a watch that cost more than my stipend. The department formed an academic integrity panel, 3 faculty, 1 student rep, me as witness. It was on Zoom because Parker was in Dubai for business. He was in a pool cabana. He logged on shirtless, AirPods in, kept calling the chair, "Professor Lisa?" like he was ordering a cocktail. "I prepared with a private tutor," he said. "If my answers sound professional, that's because I invest in myself." The chair asked for the tutor's name. "That's confidential." He smirked and added, "If this turns punitive, my family will reevaluate our philanthropic commitments." 2 professors stared like they just smelled something sour. I shared my screen, Parker's exam, the site he plagiarized from, and timing data showing he input the answers in 43 seconds average per question. He rolled his eyes. "Data can be manipulated." Then the student rep, quiet until then, asked to present. She had a PDF labeled Submission History. A campus IT admin had acted on a separate complaint sent through the anonymous ethics portal. The complaint included screen recordings of Parker's iPad mirroring the paywalled site during the midterm. The recording started 30 seconds before the exam opened. "Who submitted this?" Parker demanded. The chair refused to say. He raised his voice, saying his father built your new innovation center and you people were ungrateful. He called the process a witch hunt and promised to speak to the president. Then the student rep unmuted again. "Parker," she said softly, "you FaceTimed me from that cabana to brag about the site last month. You forgot I record my calls for notes when I'm doing group projects." The twist was not revenge. It was the sender. The ethics complaint came from P. Van Ness. That's Parker's younger sister, a first year on need-blind aid because she refused family money. She'd watched him cheat on everything from Monopoly to taxes and decided not to carry it anymore. The panel imposed a 1-year suspension and revoked the donor-named scholarship that required good standing. A week later, the university silently removed their surname from the Innovation Center website with the note, "Pledge unfulfilled." The rumor mill says the family tried to claw back a payment and got laughed out of legal. Parker emailed me a single line, "You people are petty." I replied with campus policy text and a link to the tutoring center that costs exactly $0.
His sister sent me a thank you note and a $5 coffee card. It tasted better than whatever was in his Cabana glass.
Story 7. I'm the charge nurse in a city ER where Mondays smell like bleach and adrenaline. Around 7 p.m., security radios, VIP inbound, refusing triage. In strides a 20-something in designer sweats, bleeding from a tiny cut on his eyebrow. Behind him, 2 handlers and a cameraman live streaming to an audience that kept typing, "King." He points at a mother cradling a kid with blue lips and yells, "Do you know who I am? My father's name is on your cardiology wing." Triage isn't a theme park line. We go by who might die first. I tell him he'll be seen after the asthma kid, after the septic granny, after the construction worker with a nail through his hand. He steps into my space and says, "I'll have your job by morning." The live stream booms. She's shaking. She knows. I hold up a hand to the camera. No recording in patient care areas. He laughs and keeps going until security gently shepherds him to a chair. Then the doors slam open. Code stroke from EMS. The patient is a suited man in his 60s, drooling, right side weakness. The EMS medic is all calm. Last known well, 1805. I glance at the paperwork and the name punches me in the gut. The kid's father. While we wheel him to CT, the son tries to follow us in. "My dad needs the best room," he insists. I point to the quiet lobby room we used to give bad news. "Sit. Now." Protocol moves like choreography when it works. CT, labs, neuro at bedside, TPA clock ticking. We're about to push when the son barrels in again to film. Security blocks him. He knocks the phone out of his own cameraman's hand and screams, "This is my hospital." His father can't speak, but tears leak out of the eye that still obeys him. Our neurologist, who rides a 15-year-old bike and taught half the interns for free, doesn't look up from the chart. "It's not," she says. "It's his hospital," pointing to the asthmatic kid we'd intubated earlier, "and hers, and his, and mine." We push TPA. He stabilizes. The sun, finally empty, slides down a wall like the battery fell out of a toy. "I just wanted my dad to be okay," he whispers to no one. A social worker brings him water. The live stream went dark. His followers pivoted to a meme within minutes. The punch? 2 days later, the foundation office called to offer VIP training for ER staff. Our chief said no. Instead, the father, once he could speak, sent a handwritten letter addressed to me and the neurologist. It said, "You saved me because you ignored my son and followed rules. Please accept this gift," and named an endowment for emergency care for the uninsured, with a clause, "No recognition signage." The son showed up a week after discharge with a paper bag. He handed me a phone, his stream phone, and said, "Can you lock this up?" I walked him to the lost and found and told him to bring it back if he ever wanted the thing that saved his dad more than cameras, waiting his turn. Story 8. I'm a museum registrar, the person who lives in the basement with temperature charts and provenance nightmares. We were mounting a show of 20th century Latin American painters. A young collector, Felix, volunteered a family piece, a glowing canvas by a master who rarely released private works. His last name unlocks velvet ropes at 2 galleries and 1 embassy party per week. My job? Vet the paperwork. Felix's provenance read like a fairy tale. Acquired directly from the artist by his grandfather, maintained in climate-controlled storage, insured with a reputable firm. Things looked fine, except for one hole. A missing decade when the painting supposedly traveled with the family. I requested shipping invoices, customs entries, old photos. Felix sent a torrent of PDFs with black bars over addresses. "Privacy concerns," he said, and added, "My grandfather funded your education room. Don't make this difficult." In conservation, we found something small, a faint stamp behind the stretcher from a defunct Buenos Aires framer whose records, God bless librarians, had been digitized. Their database showed that serial number assigned to a different work, a known fake seized in the 90s. When I called Felix, he laughed. "Do you understand how value works?" he asked. "Value is confidence. Your job is to provide it."
He arrived with a lawyer and a PR person and threatened defamation if we pulled the piece. We didn't pull it. We asked to see the back of another painting from his storage to compare stretchers. He produced it at the last second, sweating through a linen shirt. That's when the twist walked in. His childhood nanny, now retired and tiny as a sparrow, sent by his mother, carrying a cracked leather scrapbook. She had taped Polaroids of the family apartment for years. One photo, Christmas 1998, showed the masterpiece over the mantel, but reflected in a gilt mirror was the artist's signature reversed and wrong. A copy hung in the living room, while the real piece, documented elsewhere in the album, same mantel 2 months later, had a different, subtler signature and a tear near the edge. Page by page, the nanny's album showed the switch that happened when the grandfather died. The real piece left, to pay gambling debts, later confirmed by a note. The copy stayed. Felix had either believed family lore or leaned into the lie when the auction house whispered value. His meltdown wasn't rage. It was implosion. "You can't put that in a report," he said. "I'll never get invited anywhere again." We did put it in a report, with kindness and footnotes. The museum declined the loan. His PR person drafted a statement about conserving heritage that said nothing. 2 months later, a quietly listed lot appeared at a regional auction house. The same fake, now described as "School of." It fetched $4,500. The nanny mailed me a thank you card with a pressed jacaranda blossom and wrote, "I wanted him to remember the truth is worth more." In a world that auctions names, she was the only provenance that mattered.
Story 9. I'm 17 and volunteer on the race committee at a lakeside yacht club that smells like teak oil and generational wealth. My job in the patrol RIB is simple: drop marks, log times, keep an eye out when summer storms roll through. The Commodore's grandson, Ryder, yes, skippers a 40-footer paid for with graduation money. He wins a lot and smiles for a lot of donors' Instagrams. Everyone whispers that his wins are slicker than his tax. On Regatta Saturday, weather rolled in, a line of bruised clouds, whitecaps like torn paper. We set a shorter course. The fleet grumbled. During race 2, Ryder's boat surged ahead suspiciously after a lull, wake boiling like something more than wind was pushing it. My driver squinted. "He's motoring," he muttered, pointing to a half-submerged transom door shuddering. "That's illegal." We logged a protest flag on our clipboard. At the finish, the protest room filled with sunscreened fury. Ryder arrived with a lawyer in topsiders who quoted bylaws at 200 words per minute. "This is a developmental club. We encourage excellence." The judge, an old woman with a visor and a law degree, asked calmly, "Did your engine engage?" Ryder said no. His trimmer rolled his eyes. "No further questions," the lawyer snapped. Then the twist came from the bowman, a college kid who takes the bus to practice. He pulled out a GoPro. The video showed a sudden squall. A crewman slipped. A boom swung. A near man overboard. Amid the scramble, a hand, Ryder's, slapped the engine switch to keep control. His voice on camera, "No one will see." They'd kept racing. The judge replayed it, then paused on something else. The life jackets still stowed during the squall. Safety violation, too. The room went quiet, except for thunder. Ryder went red. "You cannot use stolen footage," he shouted. The bowman swallowed. "It's for our debriefs. We always run it." The Commodore stepped in, equally red, and told the judge this was a teaching moment. She agreed, and wrote her teaching on the protest form. DSQ from all races, 90-day suspension from club privileges for the skipper, mandatory safety training for the whole team. This is a yacht club, not a casino.
Chance is the only fair engine. Ryder exploded. Threats about his grandfather's donation to the youth program. Vows to start my own regatta. The bowman looked like he might vomit. Outside, lightning hit the far shore. We canceled race 3. While boats limped in, kids in Optus helped tow bigger hauls with tiny determination. Ryder ripped his burgee down and threw it at the water. It stuck to his deck like a wet accusation. The emotional punch wasn't his tantrum. It was the Commodore, who found us later at the snack bar. He bought the bowman a burger and, with hands shaking just a little, said, "You did the right thing, even if it costs me. I forgot that the club belongs to the water first." On Monday, a new rule appeared on the board. All boats must carry and use cameras during club races. The rich kids started a separate invite-only series. Only 2 boats showed. The rest of us learned to reef before the first gust and to keep receipts, even on a lake.
Story 10. I don't touch crypto unless it touches back with audited code, but I host a weekly spaces called Show Me the Receipt, where founders defend their tokenomics to a chat full of math teachers and skeptics. The week Orion asked to come on, my DMs filled with breathless disciples. He wore aviators in every photo and wrote threads about sovereign capital and breaking up with banks, then begged for exchange listings like a freshman asking for a prom date. He arrived 10 minutes early, charming and fast. "Our treasury is multi-sig," he said pre-show, with 48-month cliffs, zero chance of funny business. I cued the intro music, lo-fi beats for people who like spreadsheets. Thousands tuned in. We started with basics. He spoke in platitudes that sounded good until you held them up to a ledger. A dev from the audience asked about the emergency function in the smart contract named stabilize. Orion laughed. "Technical necessity." An on-chain watcher bot we'd invited, handle @OpenBlockMirror, posted live call traces in the nest as we talked. It's a polite narc. 40 minutes in, the bot auto-posted a red flag. Treasury transfer detected. $3 million orb from multisig to new wallet A9 with a link and a timestamp. Now. The chat exploded with rocket emojis that turned into siren emojis in a heartbeat. I asked, "Orion, can you explain this movement?" He pivoted. "We're adding liquidity." The bot posted again. Swap. $3 million orb to 1,200 ETH via tornado route detected, pending. Screenshots flew like shrapnel. "Hack," he said instantly. "We're under attack." A guest speaker requested the mic, someone named Cloud Ghost with no avatar. I don't accept randos mid-crisis. But another dev DM'd me. "That's Mira, the ex-lead engineer. Let her up." I tapped Add Speaker. Mira's voice was tired and surgical. "It's not a hack. It's your stabilized function. It routes to a hard-coded controller address, yours." She dropped a GitHub gist link with a commit history showing Orion's account merging the function after the audit labeled gas optimizations. The controller matched the Mu wallet initiating the swap. She then played a clip screen recording, her desktop debug console from a month before, where Orion typed the controller address into a test script, laughed and said, "Failsafe in case the market doesn't get it." Orion went quiet. Then he did what narc founders always do. Blamed a contractor, then context, then everyone does this. The bot posted, "Controller called self-destruct on vesting contract, founder wallet received failover. 1,000 listeners became a jury without being asked." I killed the music bed. "Community," I said, "this space can't freeze your funds, but information is friction. Mira, is there a way to pause contract?" She sighed. "There's a vote function Orion left in for show. If 51% of holders sign a pause, we can block controller calls." He assumed no one would organize. The chat went feral with Google Docs and wallet addresses. A DAO organizer who hated Orion since May spun up a snapshot proposal on air. Listeners switched between anger and spreadsheets with religious speed. 10 minutes later, a mod pinned the proposal. We heard the click-click symphony of ledger devices in kitchens and home offices worldwide. The bot posted, "Vote reached quorum. Stabilize paused. Controller blocked. Remaining treasury secured." The space erupted. Not cheers, something lower and steadier. A community remembering its weight. Orion ranted about mob rule. Then a new voice joined without requesting. My co-host patched in a reporter with a recorded call from last week, Orion trying to sell him on a story about coordinated FUD, forgetting to hang up, and saying, audibly,
We drain Monday. The timestamp said it all. We close the space with next steps, file a report, share evidence, protect small holders. A minute after we ended, Orion tweeted, "I resign," then blamed sabotage. Mira posted a commit removing her own name from the repo she built. The community multisig added a new signer, a school teacher who'd learned Solidity to protect her students from scams. The line between clown show and court of record had vanished in real time.
Story 11. I'm a tenant organizer in a rent-stabilized building that wears its age like a chipped tooth. Last spring, our new asset manager, a hedge fund son named Camden, blew in with glossy brochures and a smile that promised granite countertops to people who keep crockpots on folding tables. He started with buyout offers that sounded like vacation money until you remembered the city's vacancy market would chew you alive. When that didn't work, the repairs began. Elevators stalled, hallway lights flickered, and one morning the boiler failed during a cold snap that made your breath crystallize in your kitchen. We documented everything. Timestamps, 311 complaints, space heater receipts. Camden responded with emails from an account called Tenant Experience at, telling us to be patient stakeholders. Then he tried the illegal lockout route. 4 units found their cylinder pins mysteriously misaligned after routine safety checks. We called the emergency locksmith, the police, and the city's special litigation unit in the same breath. Housing court is fluorescent honesty. He arrived in a navy suit that looked borrowed from a richer cousin, flanked by 2 attorneys who kept calling us licensees instead of tenants. The judge, gray braid, zero tolerance, asked for the rent stabilization registrations. Camden smiled. "The building is substantially rehabilitated," he said, like he just read the phrase off a blog. His lawyer slid forward a glossy packet titled Capital Improvements. Our attorney didn't argue. She pulled out a battered accordion folder and laid down photocopies of DHCR registrations dating back to the Reagan era, plus a DOB printout showing the last rehabilitation was a paint permit in 2004. Then came the twist. Mrs. Ortiz, 82, shuffled up with a manila envelope her son found in a closet. A decades-old letter on the building owner's letterhead promising lifetime preferential rents for seniors in exchange for a tax abatement. The owner's signature? Camden's grandmother. The judge put on her glasses like a sword. "Counselor, your client's predecessor bound the owner to these terms." Camden tried to speak, and only money came out. "We donate to the housing nonprofit across the street. We have plans for a community garden." The judge banged once. "You can start by restoring heat." She issued immediate access orders, civil penalties for lockouts, and, this part made the room inhale, appointed a 7A administrator if repairs didn't hit benchmarks. That means a court-picked manager could take over the building's income. Camden went the color of old paper. "You can't take my property," he said. The judge replied, "You took their homes first." A week later, a city marshal supervised while maintenance swapped locks back and the boiler roared like a restored kingdom. We taped the court order to the lobby like art. Camden sent a final email calling us combative. We sent a photo of Mrs. Ortiz's letter in reply and CC'd his grandmother, whose address was on the original stationery. 2 days after that, an older woman with a cane showed up in the lobby and said in a voice that could cut rope, "I told him this building fed us. I didn't raise a boy to starve it." Camden lost the portfolio. Mrs. Ortiz sent us each a Tupperware of arroz con leche and said, "Keep your papers, mijo. Paper is power."
Story 12. I'm a groom, the person who wakes up before sunrise to curry a 1,200-pound animal that trusts you more than most people. My rider last season was Sienna, a rich kid equestrian whose father buys horses like sneakers. She could sit a massive oxer, but treated the barn like a set. She'd dismiss my warnings about a tender fetlock with, "He's fine, my vet said so," her vet being a man who invoices by the adjective.
At a national show, her new gelding, a saint with eyes that understood sentences, started favoring his left front. I iced, rapped, begged her to scratch. Sienna said, "We're chasing points." The steward came by. I told him I was concerned. Sienna smiled for his clipboard, then accused me of sabotaging her prep because I was bitter about my career. News to me, my career is keeping horses sound. We got to the ring. The gelding balked at the first line, not from fear, but question. "Are you sure?" Sienna spurred. He jumped, landed short, and the stride after, something in his shoulder whispered danger. I raised my hand to flag the steward. Sienna kept going. In the combination, he stopped dead, ears pleading. The crowd murmured. Sienna lit up. "Forward," she screeched, whacked him with the crop, and turned on me at the outgate. "What did you do?" The vet box is where truth lives. They pulled him in for a random check. Heart rate high, slight heat in the joint, enough for concern. The vet asked about meds. Sienna handed over a medication log that read like a spa menu. The steward's face hardened. They sent blood work to the mobile lab. I stood by the gelding's nose, whispering old pony show tunes like prayers. The twist walked up wearing dusty boots. Sienna's previous groom, a woman who'd left for creative differences carrying a thumb drive. She'd collected stable cam footage and time-stamped injections that exceeded withdrawal times. Also on it, Sienna swapping the gelding's ID tag with a less restricted horse during a previous show to skirt medication holds. The steward didn't need a law degree to read rage in a horseman's eyes. They DQ'd her on the spot and filed a WESF grievance with a welfare component. Sienna tried to pull rank. "My father sponsors this ring," she yelled. The show manager, who once mucked stalls to pay for law school, didn't flinch. "Sponsors don't own rules," she said, clipping a red suspension notice to Sienna's bridle number. The crowd didn't cheer, they do at football, but a line of grooms made a quiet wall between Sienna and the horse as the vet sedated him for imaging. The gelding needed months off, not a medal. Sienna got a provisional ban and a hearing date. Her father threatened to sue the governing body. They published the lab results instead. Here's the punch. The rescue where I volunteered offered to rehab the gelding at cost if Sienna signed him over. She refused. Her father called 3 days later and offered me extra cash to keep working. I told him no and copied the steward. He said, stunned, "It's a very good horse." I said, "He's a better life." The previous groom pooled donations and bought him when Sienna dumped him at a sale barn out of spite. The last time I saw him, he was cantering in a field, ears helicoptering, stopping only to shove his nose into my pocket for peppermints I had brought, even if I swore I wouldn't.
Story 13. Story 13. Line cook here. The owner's son, Leo, bought a failing downtown bistro and turned it into a neon supper club where the menu was written like a dare. He hired us for a soft open for friends and press, and spent pre-service pacing in a silk bomber jacket, saying vibes like a seasoning. The walk-in ran warm. I told him 3 times. He said, "We're Euro style." Health inspection rolled in 30 minutes into service because of a complaint. Someone saw raw oysters stored above raw chicken on the chef's Instagram story. Good eye, internet. The inspector was short, calm, and had the kind of patience that makes fools sloppy. She templated the temperatures, walk-in at 51 degrees Fahrenheit, hotline holding at 119 degrees Fahrenheit, shellfish tags missing like socks after laundry day. Leo tried to turn on charm. "We're creatives," he said. "We're disrupting dining." She wrote, unamused. He pivoted to menace. "My father sits on the Business Improvement District. We host their charity gala." She asked for his food protection certificate. He produced a laminated card with his name spelled wrong. She looked at the card, then at the chef, then at me. I shrugged and wiped my station again. The inspector began the embargo. Toss this, toss that. Leo lunged for the trash bags, trying to grab scallops back like a toddler whose toy was unfairly taken. "You can't throw my inventory," he whined. "That's thousands." Guests filmed. The GM went red. Half the AFN started crying. The inspector stayed steady. I can, and I am. Close now. The twist was a knock on the back door. It was an older woman in a plain blouse carrying a ledger. She asked the inspector, "You called me?" Turns out the inspector had requested corporate ownership docs in advance. Someone tipped her that Leo was laundering invoices. The woman wasn't corporate counsel. She was Leo's mother, the actual owner of the holding company he'd been using like a toy chest. She had come because the inspector left a message on the main number. She surveyed the scene, sweat-sheen cooks, oysters in the sink, her son sweating money onto the floor. She asked one question: "Did you ignore the temperatures?" Leo said the sentence every line cook learns not to say. "That's not my job." Her mouth went thin. In front of guests and phones and an inspector who never raised her voice, she fired him. "You can keep the neon sign. I'll keep the restaurant." Then she turned to us. "Anyone who wants to stay gets a raise. We do it legal or we don't do it." We closed that night, bleached everything until the chrome hurt to look at, and reopened 2 weeks later with a simple menu that didn't try to impress anyone but the thermometer. Leo posted a thread about creative persecution that died in 24 hours. The inspector came back, stamped the green grate in the window, and ordered the roast chicken. She ate at the bar, nodded at the kitchen, and left quietly. I taped my food handler cert over my station like a tiny diploma. The walk-in sits at 38 degrees Fahrenheit now, like a promise you can taste.